Hakadosh, Boker Or, Masechet Sanhedrin Daf Yomi Daf Mem Aleph, Amud Aleph, 41a1. We were talking about the concept of Malkot, and now we're going to bring another Mekor, the necessity of the requirement of Hatra'ah, of having a warning. The Chizkiah Tana, the Bet Midrash of Chizkiah, they actually taught. We're talking about a Rotzeach, a murderer, that he's going to be killed with Saif. Remember, when somebody kills somebody else, they get Hereg. Hereg is Saif, that's by the sword. So it says like this: when it says the word Yazid, we're talking about Shi Trubo Vadain Hu Mezid, meaning, how could it be he is Mezid, but that means they gave him a warning, and he's still doing it purposely. So that's the pshat that it's going to be a Mezid. So from here we see, right, that a person, okay, this is the way that Rashi is explaining in two different ways, that basically we're trying to say Yazid is Milashon Mezid, he's doing it purposely. But now what's the case? That he's killing him Be'orma. So he says he got the warning and he's still going to kill Be'orma. The Ve'rev Ishmael Tana. So this is going to be now a second one. Remember, the first one was where we came and we said, he says, he has to see the reasoning, he has to see what's going on, and therefore we said if it's not for karet, you need for malkut and other things. The Chizkiah learned it from the Chiyazidish. The Rabbi Ishmael is learning it from Hamotziim Oto Bekoshesh Etzim. Remember, this is talking about Tzilov when they brought him close, that he was Mechalel Shabbat. Now Mechalel Shabbat, you're going to get Sekila, and it says Hitrubo Vadain Hu Mikoshesh. When it says that they brought him close, the Mikoshesh is talking about that they gave him atra, they gave him a warning, and he was still Mikoshesh Etzim. So therefore, you see from here that even sikila cannot be done unless there's going to be atra. A fourth one, Dever Rebbe Tana, al davar asher inah et eshet reu. Remember, we're talking about an na'ara me'orasa. If somebody comes and he violates a woman that she's a na'ara me'orasa, which means she's betrothed but not 100% married, so she gets sikila. So he says there we're talking about al devar is al isket dibur. What's mean al isket dibur? He was over an avera after he heard it with his ears, the dibur, that he's not allowed to do such a thing, and he still did it. So therefore, he's going to be killed. So therefore, you need hatra'ah before the avera. There also, it's talking about sekila, by the way, meaning the mekoshesh Shetzi was mechalel Shabbat is sekila. This is also going to be sekila, but it's talking about a woman that she was married, right? But the first stage of marriage, of erusin. And says the Gemara, and you need all four mare mekomot. Utzricha. Why do you need all four mare mekomot? But if the Torah would have only written the first one, which is going to be having relations with a sister, so it says achoto havamina. I would have had a havamina chayve malkut in chayve mitolo. Therefore, you remember we were talking about that it was either going to be the karet or it was going to be malkut. So it's mashma from here that only malkut you need lashes, you need a warning, but you don't need warning for any of the death penalties. So therefore, right, katav lachmana v'chiyazidish, which is the second one, which there v'chiyazidish was talking about the mezid on atraba. We're talking about saif, hereg, right, the most lenient. So he says, ve'i katav lachmana v'chiyazidish. If it was only going to be written this one to do with hereg, havamina hanamile saif tikil. Maybe it's only saif because saif is so lenient. So therefore, there you need a warning. However, those sekila de chamura, the other two, we're talking about sekila. So maybe you don't need a warning. So tzricha, that's why you need also both. So says the Gemara, v'tarti ben iskalin lamali. But one second. The first one was basically karet or a lav, to do with the malkut, to do with the sister. The second one was hereg, because he murdered, so he gets killed by the sword. The last two, which is mechalel Shabbat, which is mekoshesh etzim, or the last one, which is going to be violating an arama unasa, the last two are sekila. So why do you need two by sekila? So says the Gemara, according to Rabbi Shimon, la tuyir nisrafin. It's coming to include the nisrafin that is also going to need hatra'ah. That's why I needed two of sekila to teach you the nisrafin. But according to Rabbanan, the rabbis argue on Rabbi Shimon, and they hold that srifa is more lenient than sekila. So therefore, milta dati b'kal v'chomer tarach v'katav lakra. So he says, it comes out that be'emet you could have learned to the kal v'chomer. If for sekila you need hatra to be killed, right? So kal v'chomer also, it's going to be Sirefa, but Sirefa is much lighter. It's not like Rabbi Shimon that is more stricter. But even though you could have learned it from Kal V'chomer, the Torah brought it to you in a pasuk, because many times they'll still bring it even though you could have learned it from a Kal V'chomer. So ask the Gemara, just bring one pasuk by Sekila and learn everything from it. If Sekila, which is the most strict, and you need a hatra'ah, so Kal V'chomer, all the lighter things you need hatra'ah. So answers the Gemara, Hachanam, you're right. Milta dati b'kavachomer tar v'kadav lakra. You're right. We could have done the exact same thing. Something which we could have learned in a kavachomer, we're still going to be toreach in order to bring it from the pasuk. So says the Gemara, hitirat smol lemita. Right? What happens if right now, right, if he was matirat atzmo for the mita, which means he comes and he says, I know, he knows that he's going to be killed. He doesn't care. He's still going to do it. So what does that mean? So therefore, they used to actually come and ask him, did he say that? Meaning, did he recognize it? Or you just gave him natra and he kept quiet? Or did he actually say, no, I don't care. I'm going to do whatever I want. What happened? So Minallah says the Gemara, how do we know that the mita is not going to be given to Bedin unless he was matiret atzmo for mita? Let's say he says, I don't accept what you guys are saying. I think you guys are liars. So now technically they gave him natra, but he didn't give himself up for death because he didn't want. He said, you guys are liars. What are you talking about? You guys are just saying something, inventing. So he says, Minalan, Amar Rav Avitema Chizkiah, Amar Kat says in Pasuk, Yumat Hamet. When it says this, there we're talking about that the Bedin have to come and kill somebody that does avodah zarah. So therefore it says Yumat Hamet. What does it mean? Shiatir atzmo lemita. When it says Yumat Hamet, it means that he has to actually come and permit himself to death. Meaning he has to accept upon himself that he's going to be killed. And when he recognizes and acknowledges that he's going to be killed, and he still does it, then he's going to be killed. Only then. Okay? Fine. Now the Gemara is going to bring another concept to do with hatra. Amar Rav Chanan, says Rav Chanan. Eden narame orasa shuzmu. What happens if you have the din of narame orasa, and they're going to be done hazama to them? En neragim. They're not going to be killed. Why? Mitoch sheyicholim lomar lo'osral bala banu. They have a way out. You know why? Imagine right now two witnesses come in, they say, listen, this guy came, he was bola banara rosa, and afterwards they were made the din zomim. So we want to kill him. Why would we want to kill them? We want to say, listen, at the end of the day, right, you wanted to kill him. He says, no, we never wanted to kill anybody. You know why we came to Medin? We didn't want the husband to live with her beisur. He didn't know anything about it. We know, we came, we testified. That was the only reason why we never came to kill anybody. So technically speaking, since they had this way out of saying that we never wanted to kill anybody and all they wanted to do was just come and to basically prohibit her to her husband, they don't get killed. So says the Gemara, V'ha'atruba. What are you talking about? They did a hatra. If they came and they gave her a tra'ah and they told her that it's going to be liable to death penalty, so therefore, what do you mean afterwards that they're coming and say they didn't have kavanah to kill her? They give her a warning. Answers the Gemara, de lo atruba. They didn't give her a warning. So that's why they could say, listen, we never wanted to kill anybody. So ask the Gemara, v'lo atruba, hechi miktala. He says, I don't understand. If they didn't give her hatra, so how in the world did you even want to kill her? Meaning, if nobody gave her hatra, how did you want to kill her? Answers the Gemara, be'isha chavera. We're talking about a wife, right? Which is basically, this is a woman that she's very, very knowledgeable. And therefore, since she's very knowledgeable, aliba de Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Yehuda, because says the Tanya will right to Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Yehuda Omer, chaver, eno tzarich hatra. If you shouldn't have hatra, he says, you don't have to give hatra. There's somebody that's very, very knowledgeable, they know what they're doing. Meaning, hatra'ah was only to differentiate between an accident or on purpose. Here, they know that it's prohibited. It's like coming into, they know that it's, there's no questions asked over here. So for here, the entire fact that they're coming into doing that, that's why they don't need hatra'ah. So says the Gemara, so one second. If you're not going to come and you're not going to kill them, because they didn't give hatra'ah, and since they didn't give hatra'ah, but they didn't need to give hatra'ah, but she's an eshet chaver, so fine. So therefore, they never wanted to kill. They just come and we just wanted to prohibit her and the husband. So according to that, so how do we kill her then? Why? Right? He says, like this, he says, that is we consider edut that you cannot come to be mazim. There's also brought down, by the way, in the first Tosafot of Masechet Makot, which means that if right now you're going to tell me that you cannot be mezimotam, you cannot make them into a din zomim because you can never kill them, so if it's not a good adut. You need testimony which you could actually take in responsibility. Here, there's no responsibility taken because you can never kill them. You can't do anything with them. So answers the Gemara, you're right. Since they are not killed, because they could say that they only came to prohibit her and her husband, she's also not killed. Right? So says the Gemara, So then according to that, according to Rabbi, how are you ever going to be, how are you ever going to come and have this case of that you're going to be killed? How do you have that then? Right? Why? He says, if right now you're going to tell me that they're going to be, what's the case? You can never, if you're never going to kill her and she doesn't need hatra'ah, so what's the case that she's going to be killed? So answers the Gemara, keshezinta, v'chazra v'zinta. Meaning, the Eshet Chavera is going to be chayav mitat betin without hatra'ah when she already had relations under her husband, and then she did it again. In that case, you could kill her on the second time. But the edim which are testifying on Masechet Nut on the second time around, for sure they're coming to kill her. Right? Why? Because she's already prohibited to her husband. So if they're going to come and say, we only wanted to prohibit her to her husband, she was already prohibited to the husband. She already did it once. And therefore, the second time around when she's doing it, and now you have a deem that they're coming and they're warning her, so then for sure they're only coming to kill her. So therefore they're going to be killed. So says the Gemara, but why can't they say, we came to prohibit her on the second husband? So he says, she did it on the first, right, from the Boel Rishon, what does that mean? With the same person that she did it the first time around. So in such a case, we're not going to say that the Masechet Nut, right, is going to come to prohibit her and not to kill her because she was already prohibited to her husband. So for obviously it was the same Boel. It was the same cheater, the same lover. Inami, a second answer, shezinta mikrovotea. What does that mean? She had relations with one of her family members, which is going to be in Isur Erva, that even without the Isur of Znut, she would have always been prohibited. So therefore, even if there's no Znut that they could see, that the Kavanah was Losra, not L'chayev, it's still going to be the same halacha. So says the Gemara, why do we bring down Dafkam Nara Meorasa? Afilu Nisuanami, even a married woman. The exact same halacha would have been with a married woman, right? Why do we do Nara Meorasa is Sekila, married woman Chenek? Fine, they come to a married woman, they shouldn't get killed. Why? They're going to say we never wanted to kill her. We just wanted to prohibit her on her husband. So answers Gemara, you're right. How could you find this such a case? Even in a case of Narusa, which she's still not under her husband, and because of that, you could say that the Ediz Nut, they never wanted to even think to prohibit her on their husband. Because their covenant was only to kill her. They didn't even know. So he says, they could still say, that means even though she never lived with her husband, they could still come and say it was to prohibit her upon her husband. Okay? Fine. So says the Gemara, Amar Rav Chasta, says Rav Chasta, Echad Omer, B'Saif Arago. Imagine right now, one of the Adim said that he killed, that means the Rotzeach came, the murderer came and he killed with a saif, with a sword. And one of them says with a Aridan. Aridan is another type of, it's like an axe. Harago. So Enze Nachon. Obviously, it's not true. And therefore, you cancel all the testimony. Echad Omer Kelav Shechorim, V'Echad Omer Kelav Evanim. However, one of them says white utensils. The other one says black. It's going to be okay. It's not a stira, because if you remember, those were one of the bedikot, and we said that it's not going to be mevatel. So Meitvei, we ask a question, nachon, right? What does it mean, shiye nachon? V'nei men nachon adavar. What does it mean, nachon? Shiye nachon. Echad omer tzai v'gov, echad omer badiyan energo, echad omer kelim shechor v'echad, and ze nachon. According to this Braita, this is asking from a Braita, and the Braita says that not only is saif and aridan, meaning the utensil, the weapon which was used, is considered a problem, even if it's going to be kelim shechorim, kelim vanim, which means the color of it, it's also going to be a problem. So Rav Chasta comes and he says, "Besudar shechan kobo tehainu saif aridan." He says Rav Chasta was explaining when it's talking about the kelim, we're talking about that it was not the clothing that they were wearing. It was talking about also another utensil, which means they were talking about how did he kill him. One person said a sword, another person said an axe, another person said that he came and he actually he choked him with a sudar, with a scarf. Okay, v'tashema, we wanted to bring a proof to this. If one of them says the sandalim were going to be black, and another one says the sandalim, the shoes are going to be white, it's not nachon. So 1 second, this is a proof that even the kelim, that they have to be the same color. That means if you're going to come and say different colors, it's a contradiction. Answers the Gemara Hatanami also over there. No, they're talking about that it was used as a weapon to kill. He kicked him and he killed him. And therefore, since the weapon was there was a mistake in the color of the weapon, that's why it's not going to be good. Tashma, another proof. He came, he started looking into them, even the uksetena. You were under a tree. What, a fig tree? The uksim. They want to come and see all the, so you want to check it into it, all the details even. No, he plucked the te'ena. And therefore, that's why he's going to be chayav on Shabbat. That's why he's going to be killed. Meaning, we're not talking about stam, like some small details that anyway they wouldn't have known. So, ask the Gemara, "V'atanya amru lo tachat te'ena rago." He killed him under a te'ena. And Amenu Rechama kigon sheshefado biyichud shel te'ena. He went and he plucked him right with the yichud of the te'ena, with the anaf of the te'ena, and he killed him with the te'ena tree. And he used like a branch or whatever it is, and he killed the guy with it. Tashemar, they're going to try to bring a proof now. Amarla, and they said, Te'ena zo uktzin dakin uktzin gasin. Are they going to have the big ones or the small uktzin? Right? So he says, Te'anim shchorot, Te'anim even know was it white or black figs. Salam Rav Yosef says of Yosef, min ben Zakai lo tiv inish. Right? You're going to ask a question on the Marav from Ben Zakai. Shana Ben Zakai, the b'dikot b'chakiro mashula. Ben Zakai, Rabbi Yochanan Ben Zakai had a special shita. B'dikot or like chakirot. And therefore, since he had this special shita that bedikot or like chakirot, you can't bring a proof to him because he's mamash being strict that even the bedikot or like chakirot. So if there's going to be a contradiction, nada. So man ben Zakai, who's ben Zakai? If you're going to tell me Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakai, he was never in the Sanhedrin. But Tanya, we learned he was 120 years old. 40 shana he was doing mischar. 40 years he was learning Torah, and 40 years he taught Torah. The Tanya we learned. 40 shana kodem churban habayit galta Sanhedrin. That already 40 years before the churban, the Bet Hamikdash was right. The Sanhedrin was already went into galut. Yashvala b'chanut, and they were in a storefront in Yerushalayim. And says of Yisabar Avdimi, Lomar lo danu dinei krasot. They didn't do dinei krasot. So answers the Gemara, dinei krasot sal kadai. Do you really think it's dinei krasot? Ella lo danu dinei fashot. Meaning, since they went into exile, they didn't do dinei fashot. So he says, Utznan, we learned, which means that Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakai was after the Churban HaBayit. So if 40 years before the Churban HaBayit they weren't doing dinei nefashot, so how did he have the power to come and start cross-examining good things, witnesses, and then you're not going to kill? Anyway, it doesn't help. So he says, Ben Zakai de Alma. Stam Ben Zakai from the Sanhedrin. It's also logical. You're going to tell me Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakai, right? Karule Rabbi. Right, Rabbi Yudan ben Sayi is going to call him Ben Zakai. He says, why didn't they call him Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakai? So it had to be somebody else. It wasn't just Stam Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakai. It was Stam ben Zakai. So says the Gemara, one second, but Vatanya Maseu v'dak Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakai v'uksetenim. So he says, Ella Talmida Yoshev lifnei Rabbo Ava. No, that was a Talmid in front of his rabbi, which means when this happened 40 years in the middle of the life of Rabbi Yochanan, right, and which he was learning. And therefore, they were still doing the dinei nefashot. So therefore, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakai was sitting down in the Talmidim, and he said, he said something, and it was very logical what he said, right? Elmaleh from Bet 41b. They were kovea it in his name. That is, even though he was a Talmid at the time, but when they said, this is Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakai, it's in his name. Ben Zakai, when he was learning Torah, he was called Ben Zakai, right? Just like a Talmid Shel Lifnei Rabbo. But when he was teaching the Torah, they used to call him Rabban Yochanan ben Zakai. Kikarle ben Zakai al Shem de Miikara. They called him Ben Zakai because that means even though here they called him because of his beginning. Then it was now. Meaning any psak or anything that was said at the beginning, when he was still a Talmid, he was called Ben Zakai. But once he was already teaching it, Rabban Yochanan ben Zakai. 2 dots. The 2 dots on Elmaleh from Bet 41b, the 2 dots. Ma ben chakirot lebedikot. What's the difference between chakirot and bedikot? Says the Gemara, what does it mean, afilu shnaim omrim? Even if 2 of them come and they say, we don't know, it's still going to be a good edut. Pshita, it's obvious. Ki amar echad en yodea, when one of them says, I don't know, he says, edutan kayemet. So he says, amri, ki amri beitrei, nami edutan kayemet. So even if both of them come and they say it, it's still going to be okay. So you're not going to come and you're going to say that on that detail that they don't know that that's it. So Amar of Shishat says of Shishat, Reisha Kai. We're talking about the Reisha. Be'haki, this is what we're going to say. By Chakirot, even if both of them say Yadanu, and one of them says in Yodea, that means even if you have the 2 witnesses that they say Yadanu, we knew about it. And now you have an Ed Shlishi, a 3rd witness, and he says in Yodea, the entire thing is out the window. Keman, who does that go like? Like Rabbi Akiva, the Makish Shlosha L'Shnaim, that Rabbi Akiva makes a kesh, 3 witnesses to 2 witnesses. So that means even though technically I didn't need the 3rd witness, and I could have thrown around and said, I don't need you. The fact that right now he's here, it's going to make it detrimental if he says, I don't know. Because by a chakira, if you say you don't know, you're out. It's a b'dika, it doesn't matter. So Rava says, what are you talking about? By edutan kayemet katani, we learned edutan kayemet. אלא רבא, ברado רבא says, like what does it say? אפילו בחקירות, שניים אומרים ידענו ואחד אומר אני יודע, עדותן קיימת. By חקירות, it is going to be good. And who's that? It's not like Rabbi Akiva. Because remember, if you're not making that cash, so you just tell him, step aside, I don't need you, I need the other two witnesses, and then that's it. Rav Kahana and Rav Safra Tanu Sanhedrin Berabba. So Rav Kahana and Rav Safra, they learned Masechet Sanhedrin in the Bet HaMidrash of Rabba. Paga be'urami Barchama, and they saw Rabbi Merchama. V'amarlu, and he came and he said, what did they say in the Masechet Sanhedrin in the house of Rabba? So Amri Lei, they told him, what do they say? Stam. What's the question? Amarlehu, from that which we say, what's the difference between Chakirot and Medikot? Chakirot, if one of them says in Yudea, Medikot, if one of them says in Yudea, even both of them say in Yudea, it's still going to be okay. Michti, he says, 1 second, both Chakirot and Medikot are Doraita. So what's the difference between Chakirot and Medikot? If they're both Dinim Doraita, what do I care now whether it's Bedika or Chakira? At the end of the day, they don't know, they don't know. So Amri Le, they said, Yasha, can you compare both cases? But Chakirot, Amar Echad, if one of them says in Yudea, I don't know, Edutam Betela. But Bedikot, if one of them says in Yudea, Edutam Kayemet, because it's Edut Shata Yachol Azima, you could still make them Edin Zomim. So Amar Lehu, so he told him, Ihaki Amrituba, if that's what they said, Tuva Amrituba. So they said a lot of things then. There's a bet Tamim then. So Amri Le, they said, Mitivute de Mor, because of the kavod of Mor, that you're such an anav, Amrinam Batuva. You said that there's a lot of things. Min Zuhute de Mor, but also the Garav Kvodo, which means that, you wanted to say something Bichoska, Lo Amrinam Balochada. I didn't say anything. Right? We wouldn't have even said one thing. Right? Why? Because we don't know nothing compared to you. Okay? Fine. The next two dots. Echad Omer. One of them comes and he says, right, B'shnaim B'chodesh, and the other one says B'shlosha B'chodesh. So he says, if you remember the second day of the month and third day of the month, we said it's okay, because one of them doesn't know that it was made into a month of 30 days or not. So at Kama, how many? Amar Biyacha Bar Chanina Amar Vasi Amar Yochanan Rubosh Shel Chodesh. We could say that a person can make a mistake the majority of the month, meaning it's not only just the third, second and the third. It could be the 5th and the 6th, 9th and 10th, 12 and 13. So Amar Rava says, Afanam and Tanina, we also learned it. Echad Omer, one of them says B'shosha Echad Omer B'chamisha, then it's Edutam Etila. Why? Why don't I just say that one knows the Bishnei Burin, one doesn't know? So he says, no, Mishum de Veruba Yada, the majority of them, they'll know. Meaning, once it gets to the majority of the month, a person already knows if they made it into a leap year month or not, meaning if they added a day or not. Right? So that's one way of looking at it. But says the Gemara, even if you're going to tell me the majority, they don't know. Uveshipura Yada, Bechad Shipura Amar Detae. He says, no, they could only make a mistake in 1 month, not in 2 months. Meaning, I can make a mistake on this month, was it a 30 day, not a 30 day, and then you're going to come in, that you can make a mistake. But to make a mistake in 2 months, that you thought it was a leap month or not, in that 2 months, they don't make such a mistake. Until when are you going to make Kiddush Birkat Levana? Until the Lavana is going to be that it's not going to have a Pgam anymore. Which the Kama, from 7 days in the no, until the 16th of the month. Okay?